Council, come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, could you please call the roll?
Raynold. Here. Butler.
Here.
Carlstone.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Van Strylen.
Here.
And DeYoung is absent.
The City Council has adopted a code of civility. As elected officials, we pledge to promote civility through extending respect to others, listening to understand, disagreeing without disrespect, engaging collaboratively, and speaking up to address incivility. And a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and broadcast for Pella TV, so anyone who speaks to the council, please come to the podium, to the microphone before speaking so that those listening at home can hear your comments and see you on camera. Can I get a motion for approval of the tentative agenda?
So moved. Support.
Van Strylen, Carlstone, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Raynold.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time we have opportunity for a public forum. Anyone wishing to address council regarding agenda items, step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. Branderhorst, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Raynold.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving to a public hearing on not to exceed $500,000 lease agreement, general fund. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. For those in attendance and those watching at home on Pella Fiber, I'd like to direct your attention to the big board for a brief presentation on this item. Mayor DeWard stated tonight's public hearing is in regards to ground equipment for the Boss Lawn and the golf course. It's an equipment lease that's being proposed this evening. It is important to note that this item was bid on it, and Toro was the low bidder on this. So as far as tonight's proceedings, it's very important to note this is the same proposal that we discussed last fall with the council in regards to the ground equipment. Equally important to note that our current grounds equipment lease expires in May of this year, so this issue is very timely. The first resolution that we have associated tonight is a resolution that authorizes the city to take additional action on the lease agreement, and then the resolution 6813 actually authorizes the action for the lease agreement payable from the general fund in the amount of $474,472.80. It is important to note that this is a 5-year lease, and we have annual lease payments just under $95,000 per year. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Any written comments?
No written comments.
Council comments? Any member of the audience have a comment about this? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support. Hopkins, Van Strylen, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Raynold.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6812, entitled Resolution Instituting Proceedings to Take Additional Action for the Authorization of a Lease Agreement for Acquisition of Equipment for the Boss Lawn and Golf Facility payable from the general fund in the principal amount of not to exceed $500,000 for personal property for use by the city. I assume nothing to add. I get a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support. Branderhorst, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Raynold.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to resolution number 6813, entitled Resolution Authorizing Action for a Lease Agreement Payable from the General Fund in the principal amount of $474,472.80 for the personal property for use by the city. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Van Strylen, Hopkins, any discussion? favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Reindeerhorst,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, we're gonna get a fiscal year 25-26 budget overview. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board for a presentation on this item. As Mayor DeWart stated, tonight's presentation is on the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. That's the fiscal year that would start on July 1st of this year and extend through June 30th, 2026. Now, overall, just a quick overview of the proposed rates that are associated with the budget. What's being proposed with the 2026 budget is to maintain the city's current property tax rate at $10.75 per $1,000 of taxable valuation, where there's going to be considerable more discussion and presentation on that item. In addition, we do have some associated rate increases for water and wastewater utilities. Both of these items are associated with long-term capital facility plans. In the case of wastewater, is directly attributed to new federal mandates that we are faced with, or nutrient reduction strategies as well. In addition, tonight we will be highlighting some service fee increases that we are also proposing in regards to this budget as well. And finally, when we take a look at employee compensation, it is important to note that we are not proposing any new or additional employees that's associated with this budget. However, we are budgeting employee compensation increases of right around 4.5%. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. It's maybe a little tough to see, but overall, when we talk about the city's budget, we're just under, with this operating budget, just under $80 million as far as total revenue that we have associated. One of the things that I always like to look at when we talk about the budget, and I should say 25-26 on there as well, that'd be on the left-hand column, what's being proposed right here. Is property taxes. Anytime you talk about cities, always gets a lion's share of the attention, and is what most people associate as traditional governmental services. But when you look at the city's budget on their property taxes, is just under $7.6 million on a revenue source. That's just under $80 million overall as far as a total budget. Most of the city's revenue that's associated with this budget is associated with utility revenue services as well. So once again, the City of Pella is a full-service city. We offer the traditional governmental services as well as the majority of the utility services that our residents do receive as well. Now, as far as expenditures are concerned, again, looking at this budget, there's no new employees that have been proposed with the budget, but some of the items, just to explain here, during this year, mid-year, we actually added four paramedics for the ambulance department. Those are new employees. The full cost of those employees is showing up here on our budget as well, and that is the reason for the lion's share of the 6.51% increase as opposed to the 4.5% is what the wages were going up for the compensation increases that we had projected as well. Most of the departments, when we meet for the budget work sessions on the 11th and 12th next week, will tell you that their operating budget was very challenging this year. For the department's operating budgets, what happened with it is part of our strategy to balance the general fund budgets. We rolled back the budget amounts back to the 25 levels as well on that. So it's a very tight operating budget. Most of the increases that you see associated with the operating increases that are associated with this are due to power supply increases, and then also we had some increases on the utility side of things, particularly with Pella Fiber, that was directly attributed to new customers being taken on by the utility as well. We're going to spend some time this evening talking about capital improvements, so I'm going to save my comments for that section of the presentation. But overall, we're projecting an increase in reserves of just shy of $4.9 million for next year. I would label that as probably one of the reasons for it. That would be unexpended bond proceeds that we'll have with this as well. We are proposing with this, if council moves forward with the city's long-term facility plan. If you recall, what we've traditionally talked about is a $17 million local option sales and services tax bond issue with that. That is what is being proposed with this budget. The construction for the rec center would actually take place over FY 25-26 as well as 26-27. So that is the lion's share for the increase in the proposed reserves. One of the items that I would think that's been challenging for our staff is when you look at the number of projects that we have and the span of influence that we have from the city government side of things to the streets, to the mandates that we're facing both on the water and wastewater side, in addition with a very extensive electric utility CIP as well. The city's 5-year capital improvement program is just over $129 million that's associated with this budget as well. So before we go on in the presentation, is there any questions as far as the overall budget for the city, what's being proposed?
How many years did you say that was over, Mike?
5 years.
5. Thanks.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, before we get into the numbers, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that when we talk about property taxes, the City of Pella has done a very good job over the years with our property tax rate. Listed up on the board is a list of, like we would say, cities that are very similar size to Pella. And what you'll see is that the average tax rate for those cities is right at $15 or so. We're at $10.75. We did increase our levy last year. It was the first time in 22 years that we had to increase our operating levy, but overall, from a property tax standpoint, I think you'll find our rate to be very competitive in the state of Iowa. In fact, not one of the lowest rates in the state of Iowa as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. As far as the other utility rates, I feel good about where the city's utility rates are. Every time that we've done analysis or comparisons on the city's utility rates, we've always found that they've been very comparative with that. And I would also like to mention, when you look at the city's electric rates, a recent survey by the American Public Power Association pointed out that Pella has the 16th lowest electric rates in the state as far as municipal utilities. That's out of 143 municipal electric utilities. So we've made tremendous traction on that as far as improving our ranking, and I anticipate, since we've secured our long-term power supply plan with that rate will continue to decrease as well. But generally, when you look at it, the reason I can state that is power supply and transmission costs make up about 80% of the costs associated with your electric utility. Our contract with Missouri River is through the year 2057, so we have a long-term power supply contract on that. I feel really good where our rates are, and I also believe that we'll be able to actually make some traction as far as our improvement on the rankings as well. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. A little brief overview of the personnel highlights that are associated with the budget. As we stated earlier, the personnel and compensation and benefits account for right around $16.1 million. As far as staff increases that's associated with this budget is we're really broken up into two components. One of them is we're proposing to move the entire scale up 1.5%, and we're also proposing merit increases next year for our staff as well at 3%. If you add those both together, the average employee at the City of Pella will receive about a 4.5% raise next year that we have associated with this budget. It's very important to note that the 4.5% also matches the employment cost index for the 12 months ended on December 31st, 2024. That's the last numbers that we had available on this as well. So we are matching the ECI as far as employee compensation. I would be remiss to state, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges associated with this budget as well. But when we look especially on the general fund side, and you've heard a lot of talk about property tax legislation, and trust me, it is very challenging with that. One of the items that we've looked at as far as our compensation is there's a good chance we may need to consider in the future going to more of a merit-based structure for employee compensation. In prepping for that, we were proposing a compensation study in 2027, 2028 on that as well. So we've got a ways out there for the compensation study. But I just wanted to mention that to the council as far as a strategy. Ultimately, when we talk about the state property tax legislation, the rule of thumb, I think what you could look at is currently we're allowed somewhere about a 2.75 to about a 3% annual increase for a town. Pella is what it seems to me on the numbers. Looking at this, if you look at the employee compensation associated with this budget, it's a 4.5%. You can do that for a while, but eventually you need to get down to those levels that the state has at the 3% or bring in additional revenues on it. And so this budget is what I would say is the first step as far as a long-term financial plan. Some of this is going to take some time to do with it, but that's just one component would be employee compensation on this as well. Now, as far as the employees are concerned, you'll also notice we're not proposing any new employees, both full-time or part-time employees as well. So from a standpoint, if you wanted to put an overall analysis or summary of this budget, is maintaining existing service levels for the City of Pella. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy.
Mike, I have a quick
Thank
question.
you. Go ahead.
On the no new employees proposed,
Mhm.
does that include vacancies that we have in certain departments?
Yeah.
Are we going to fill those vacancies, or are we not going to fill the vacancies? And if we are not going to fill the vacancies immediately, are we putting placeholders in the budget for those vacancies?
Very good question. The answer is yes, we have vacant positions, and the answer is we'll be covering that later on too.
Okay.
We're going to perform an extent. We will be evaluating those positions as well. But the third question, I believe you said, does the budget include placeholders for
Yes.
those positions? The answer is yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. And as you can see, this is a summary of the city's full-time employees over the last 10 years. And we have had some significant increases at Pella, but I would also state that most of this has been for new services that 10 years ago we are not offering to the community. They include both Pella Fiber, the community ambulance services, as well as undertaking operations at the Boss Lawn and Golf Course. If you were to look at those three areas, that is the lion's share of the employee increases that's occurred over the last 10 years for the city. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. Now, as far as key issues that are impacting the proposed 2026 budget, we have this proposed, well, actually existing property tax reform in the state of Iowa. And also, I would tell you, there's a plethora of bills out there right now on additional property tax legislation. And so, as of this date, some of these items are just unresolved with it. But ultimately, if you wanted to look at it and summarize it in a nutshell, it's going to reduce the city's ability for property tax growth, or our ability to increase the property tax levy on it. And so, without even arguing the rights or the wrongs of it with it, but the reality is it's here, we got to deal with it. And it's been my experience, anytime you have property tax legislation, as what's being proposed, is you have to take kind of a long-term view on it and be making gradual changes instead of significant changes all at once. That's what we view this budget as the initial step as far as conforming with the state of Iowa's new property tax system. In addition, another key item that made this budget very, very challenging is the federal mandates that we're currently facing, particularly on the wastewater side. You're going to see some extensive capital improvements on the wastewater side this evening that deal with the nutrient reduction strategy. And anytime you deal with new treatment standards, what usually happens is you go through with the DNR and you form what's called the long-term facility plan, those needed capital improvements over the next 20 years. With those improvements, what's been the track history is we usually take those improvements within the next 2 to 3 years with it. So I believe we're to the tune of about $24 million in wastewater improvements that we'll be facing on that as well. As far as the federal mandates on the water utility side, and this is somewhat of a work in progress, we've talked a lot at the city council level. As far as the lead water service lines, we have roughly about 600 private lead water service lines within the community that currently the EPA has mandated that communities shall replace those within the next 10 years. However, that law is currently, or that ruling is currently being challenged right now, so we're unclear and it's uncertain at this time if it's going to withstand on it. There's also been talk about additional legislation and backing up that timeline or giving cities additional time to perform those replacements from 10 years up to 30 years as well. So that's somewhat of a work in progress, but the other thing associated with the water utility is you'll notice we're proposing some extensive improvements to both our drinking water sources as well as treatment as well with associated with this budget. So when you look at it, and the things that made this budget challenging was the property tax reform in the state of Iowa, federal mandates, the full list of other items up there is we have aging infrastructure in the community. In addition, we're also facing federal mandates. And so just to kind of summarize things, we've got our work cut out for us at the city level. So let's go ahead, Mandy. Yeah, I kind of stole my comments on this, but when you look at aging infrastructure and facilities and escalating construction costs, you wrap those together. I think you'd say a fair assessment of this budget. It was very, very challenging and will continue to be challenging in upcoming fiscal years as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Zero down and start talking about funds associated with the budget. When we talk about nearly $80 million worth of improvements that we have associated with the budget, or revenues anyway, It's important to note that that encompasses the entire city budget. When we look at the general fund, it's greatly reduced. In fact, the general fund is closer to about $12 million for the City of Pella. It gets a lot of attention at the state level and nationwide as well. As far as property taxes is concerned, I'd like to state also that traditionally property taxes has been somewhere in the 60 percentile as far as funding general fund services. That amount has been decreasing over the years. Last year it was at 57%. It's decreased further associated with the 2026 budget. But it is important to note that we are maintaining a rate at $10.75. We're also maintaining the existing service levels. So what the strategy is in doing that is if property taxes, you're being constricted on your property tax revenues, what you ultimately need to do if you're going to maintain existing service levels is bring in additional revenue to support the general fund. We're proposing on a short-term basis some strategies to do that, but gradually what would likely need to happen is we're going to need to take a look at additional fees to support general fund services in the future. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. And speaking of that, what's associated with the budget is we are proposing increases in fees, development fees, recreation fees, and we also have some fire station rental fees that we'll be talking about next week. Equally important to note that on all the fees, we feel we're very much within market on the proposed fee increases for these services. And if you wanted to look at it just from a snapshot is if you're being constricted on your general fund services, then you've got to look at also potentially increasing service level fees to support those general fund services as well. The other strategy that we used with the departments is, as everyone knows, inflation's been a significant issue over the past few years. We've challenged the departments in the general fund as we roll back the budget. Normally for the operating budgets, we factor in inflationary type increases. We didn't do that this year. And what that created for a lot of the departments was some zero-based budgeting that was going on throughout the city with it. At the end of the day, we feel good at where we're at with the operating budgets, but I won't lie to you, it was a challenging year this year as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, one of the items that we're going to spend some time next week talking about is electric contributions to the general fund. In prefacing this, it's very important to note that we've had a plan in place for the electric utility for some time that dealt with power supply. You heard earlier that power supply makes up about 75 to 80% of the total cost for the electric utility. We have a very secure source of power for the community. And with that, it's also important to note that we've spent significantly as far as infrastructure that's been associated with the city's electric utility over the last 14 years, and that's put the city in a very good position financially with the utility. What we're proposing on this is to look at this as in two phases here. The first phase would be increasing the electric contributions to support the general fund. And what's being proposed is to increase the amount of, I'd say, contributions to the general fund from 4.1% of operating revenues up to about 5.8% of operating revenues. That's about $350,000 that we would have associated with that. The second item that we had to account for with this budget was there's projects that we've been discussing quite a bit. Some of them in council seems to, and they're in various stages of proceeding. But we had some projects that we had to account for that's associated with this budget, and they totaled almost $3.2 million. And so on an as-needed basis, and I'm going to preface my comments on this, is the one that's locked in is this number, 5.8. However, we may need to dip into an additional 1.2% depending on how these projects are financed, and we're still looking at them, and I believe we have options for these projects. But Mandy, let's go ahead and show these projects up on the screen. These are all items that were either associated with the budget last year or somewhat new projects that the city undertook this year on them. Either way, we have to make sure we account for them on it. So when we look at that 1.2%, that's what's being proposed with additional electric contributions with it as well. If we didn't do that, your tax rate on the debt service levy rate would have went up at right around 30 to 35 cents on it as well. And so our thoughts were with the surplus revenue, and surplus revenue is a bad term on it. If you look at our electric rates, the truth is we're gaining traction on those electric rates. We have the 16th lowest rates in the state. We've made extensive investments on the transmission side, the distribution side with our utility. We have a long-term power supply agreement that's through the year 2057, and we're above fund balance standards for the electric utility according to nationally recognized formulas. That's the American Public Power Association. So with that, I believe that we can make this if we are forced to with the electric utility. But overall, if you were to look at the dollar amount and the increased dollar amounts, about $650,000 of additional contributions from the electric utility to the general fund. We're going to be spending considerably more time on this issue during the budget work sessions next week as well, so please keep that in mind. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. And I believe we said that. If you looked at this and just if you wanted a quick summary on this, if you added in that 1.2% plus our 5.8%, we'd be at 7%. Total amount would be $1.6 million. Missouri River, on an annual basis, surveys approximately 60 electric utilities that they have privileged to have, or actually have access to their financial information. Of those 60 utilities, the average transfer to the general fund is 7.6%. So even if we go up to 7%, we'd still be below the average of these 60 utilities that we have as well. And like I said, based off our projections, we're going to be spending considerably more time on this next week. We believe we're still above fund balance standards as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. Now, as far as agreements that we have, and this is probably one of the key issues, we need to keep in mind that there's some items that may occur that may impact this budget. If it does, we'll have to adapt to it as well, but some of the items are just unresolved at this point in time. The biggest one I would say on this list is the impending property tax legislation at the state of Iowa that's being considered. If it happens, I would also tell you this is the reason why we budget over multiple years at the City of Pella. So we're talking about 2026, but the truth is next week you're going to be seeing financial information and financial forecasts for the general fund that extend over a 3-year time period. Utilities will be over a 5-year time period. So if this happens, we'll adjust accordingly on it as well. The other thing I want to mention locally is that we have 2 partnership agreements that will be expiring on December 31st of this year. The first one is the Marion County Lost Agreement. The annual revenues off that is associated is $440,000. The second one that we have is our transport agreement with Pella Regional. It's right around $350,000, and we'll be working with the respective entities on renewing those agreements as well. I would also like to mention that we have a potential essential services tax referendum that could take place in fiscal year 2026 as well. So if you're looking at a planning standpoint, a strategy standpoint, one of the reasons we think it's important to stay at 1075 is there's some unresolved issues right now on it, and it's been my experience when you have unresolved issues, it complicates matters when you have proposed tax rate increases associated with it as well. So please keep that in mind as you consider the 2026 budget. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as future strategies, the council's seen this chart a lot. We talk about a balanced approach, and it's been my experience in government is anytime you face difficulties, particularly whether it's state funding decreases, property tax reform, it's important not to be short-sighted on the matter. The truth of the matter is to be successful, you have to have a balanced approach to things. And listed up here is kind of our pie chart. And we want to make sure as we approach stuff and potentially, tight budgets in the future for the city, that we keep a balanced approach. And the truth of the matter is, if any one of these gets skewed or shortchanged on it, it'll be quickly have to be needed to be addressed as well. So that's the key to matters is anytime you face financial difficulties, please keep in mind that you have to have multi-year budgeting and you have to have a financial plan. The second thing is that you have to have a balanced approach as well. So that's the big picture overview of the strategy that we intend to propose to the City Council in balancing future general fund budgets. But let's talk about a few items that we feel that are achievable for the city, that's kind of the rubber hits the road type items on it. So Andy, let's go ahead. Here's some items that we feel, just looking at the big picture with property tax reform in the state of Iowa, is we feel the city should consider annexing areas which abut the city limits and currently receive utility services. The truth of the matter is, we have areas around town that abut the city that receive utility services from the City of Pella, and probably other city services such as ambulance services from the City of Pella. But as far as property taxes are not contributing to the base of those services, we feel just from a point of fairness that it's important that occurs as far as the annexation, and it's also important as far as increasing the city's tax base to be able to continue to provide those services in the future. Lucky for us that a lot of these areas are also some of the biggest areas that are requesting Pella fiber as well. So, and today we haven't extended outside city limits, but that could be something that could be in exchange for voluntary annexation into the City of Pella. The second item that we have, and I'm going to preface this, in Pella we're very, very fortunate. One of the reasons the city has a low tax rate is we have a great community. We have a lot of people volunteering for the city. And we also have a lot of people above and beyond what I'm showing this evening that contribute financially to the city, and that's been one of the biggest blessings that the city's had. In the future, when we look at projects, it's a very good chance that we're going to have to probably consider their impact to the city, and we have in the past, but we may have to prioritize those in the future, and it may be based on the maximized return for the city's investment as well. So we've listed up a few of those projects, great projects for the city, but please keep that in mind with property tax reform. When we talk about potential partnerships, we may have to prioritize those in the future. Well, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. And Councilmember Branderhorst mentioned this earlier in the presentation. When existing full-time positions become vacant, we believe that we have been doing this for some time now, but they will be evaluated for efficiencies and alignment with the city's mission as well on it. And I think this is something that private business has done over the years. We've done it at the City of Pella. We just want to make sure council's aware of it, that as positions turn over, and effectively what this occurs is non-public safety, non-essential service positions tend to get a little harder review than others on it as well. But looking at this, as positions become vacant, there may be some positions that are kept open for a while until we perform our review on it, making sure that it still fits the city's need the way it's structured as well. We stated this earlier, but looking at the amenities are one of the things that draws people to our communities, and it's important that we keep that perspective on it. But as far as financing those amenities, we may need to take a look at increasing the service level fees, and it's quite likely, in my opinion, that quality of life programs are going to be a higher percentage of those costs are going to be covered in the future with service level fees rather than property taxes. Another item that we're going to be discussing with this budget is a long-term strategy for infrastructure funding within the community. One of the items that we may need to consider in the future is additional funding mechanisms for that. Generally, when you deal with street reconstruction budgets on this and street reconstruction projects, you're replacing the street, the water, sanitary sewer, and the storm sewer as well. We talked to Mr. Bob Veenstra, who's an expert in the field, and he's informed me that generally when you look at those street reconstruction budgets, and you'll see with the street budget, that it's a pretty big number tonight, generally about 15% of it's associated with stormwater improvements on it as well. So when we look at that, a number of communities have a separate stormwater utility for those items, and we've also talked about initiatives as far as installing additional stormwater within our community as well. While we're not proposing a stormwater utility with this budget, it is something that's on our list of items that we should be considering in the future as well. So biggest thing I want to take away, and it may seem like this is all doom and gloom, and it's not. There's a lot of positive things going on in the community here. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say as well, I feel we have our challenges in the future, but you know, we're like the other 990 some cities in the state of Iowa, they're dealing with the same thing as well. But I like our position where we are at. I like the things that have been constructed in the community. Most of all, I like our staff as well. They've done a great job with stuff, and I'm confident heading into the future. So before we move from the general fund and start talking about utilities, is there any questions on the general fund? Lucky for me, council's seeing this for the first time this evening, so, alrighty. Let's go ahead and talk about that water infrastructure. What's associated with the water utility is we're going to be proposing that the city undergo a long-term facility plan for our water utility, and this is something very similar that we did in 2014. At that time, we proposed a new reverse osmosis treatment system. as well as an additional Jordan well for the community. And our strategy for the previous 20 years was that we would maintain the line softening plant at the water treatment plant, as well as our collector well on the Des Moines River. In operating the reverse osmosis system, we closed the line softening plant in 2017, and we haven't operated it since then. But when you look at a growing community on this as far as infrastructure is concerned, there's a potential that we may need to add a well in the future. In addition, there's a very high likelihood that we're going to have to add pre-treatment methods at our water treatment plant. In addition, on this, we may need to add additional treatment options or an RO skid at the plant in the future to satisfy demand over the next 20 years. If you look at the total supply and treatment plan that's associated with the budget, it's $9.6 million. So what we're proposing with this budget is that we spend the next year looking at long-term improvements, what would need to be meet the community's water treatment supply needs over the next 20 years. In addition, because of the size of the potential plan, we would also be looking at a cost of service actually for both utilities, both water and wastewater utility as well. I think that's important that we design our rates to actually rectify the use of the cost of servicing the various customer classes as well. And it's something that you would typically do anytime you have large initiatives associated with utilities. Ditto on the wastewater side of things, we're also proposing actually to undertake the water utility. That would be in fiscal year 25, 26, 26, 27. We'd start a facility plan for the wastewater utility. And once again, this is to comply with the state of Iowa's nutrient reduction strategy, as well as specifically our treatment of nitrogen and phosphorus at the wastewater treatment plant. We also have some capital improvements on our lift stations. We believe the total amount of those capital improvements is just shy of $25 million. That's included in the budget this evening as well. Once again, when we look at these large potential capital facilities or large capital improvements, we are proposing cost of service studies for both utilities, and that's to make sure that we have the rates aligned with actual cost of serving the various respective customer classes on that as well. So any questions on the water and wastewater utility? Okay, let's go ahead with the electric, actually streets. All right. As far as the budget is concerned, over the next 5 years, we have projects that are just shy of $25 million associated with this. So it's very heavy. This budget is very, very heavy on infrastructure on this as well. Some of our bigger projects are listed up on the big board. I would also like to mention that we have right now as a tentative placeholder is improvements in the central business district. That would actually, the construction season would be 2030. But if we're going to initiate plans for reconstruction in the central business district, it'll take every bit of planning effort to do that as well, and that's why they're out there on this. But overall, the budget's very heavy with street infrastructure projects. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. As far as our electric utility, we have some they're all exciting projects on here, but they're all, probably a better way to describe it is they're important projects with it. For the city's electric CIP, we have projects totaling $13.6 million. Council is well aware of the proposed advanced metering infrastructure project. In essence, what we're going to be doing is replacing right around 5,500 electric meters with smart meters on this. The ultimate goal with the smart meter technology is to make better people make our customers a better consumer of power on this. And the analogy on this project is, with this project, for every 1 megawatt of electricity that we could reduce our peak demand, we're about a 44 megawatt peak demand utility. If we could reduce that just 1 megawatt a month, that's about a $20,000 a month savings to the City of Pella. So it's a very, very significant savings in power supply cost to the city if we're able to do that, and maybe structure our rates and give people incentive to save this and be better consumers of energy, and particularly with more of their energy uses to off-peak hours as well. We also have a proposed improvement to the control system at our diesel plant, as well as improvements to our substations as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, before we start with just a summary of what's included with the long-term facility plan as it applies to the 2026 budget, is there any questions on either the water or electric utilities? Okay.
Oh, yeah, the 13.6 million, is that gross cost? I know
grant. The mayor is correct. That project's a $2 million grant. We got about $1.5 million grant through the U.S. Department of Energy for that project as well. And I think what we're showing in the budget of that $13.6 million is the net city cost, so $500,000 on that. So, okay. Alrighty, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. You know, as far as the long-term facility plan, we've been working on this for a long time. We're making significant progress, and these are two very exciting projects for the community. And if you recall, we led off the general fund strategy saying it would take a balanced approach for the community. If you focus, you know, it's been my experience anyway, absent a balanced approach, too much emphasis on one area, quickly throw things out of whack. The truth of the matter is we got to be able to retain citizens and offer the amenities in this community, and we also have to attract and make this place a desirable place to live and work as well. With the projects that we have that we're going to be discussing this evening is the proposed community center renovation, and you'll notice my numbers are a little different than what we've seen in the past. We have a new base project budget of $7.6 million for this project. The full project bill that you see up here, which includes the wing addition, is roughly about $8.5 million. The 7.6 would be this entire renovation and a replacement of the elevator on that as well. And that's the $7.6 million base project. For the proposed indoor recreation center, the good news is our bid letting is scheduled next Tuesday, so we'll have hard cost numbers. It's been a long time coming on the project, but it's an exciting project that we have this evening. The numbers that we have is the city's base project at $34.5 million. And what's really remarkable about Pella, really with both of these projects, is if you look at the Pella Rec Center, what's being proposed is a $17 million contribution by the City of Pella and $17.5 million by other parties other than Pella. So that's remarkable for a project of that size. Similar with the community center is the City of Pella would have roughly a $5.5 million project on this. So both of these projects are very good examples of why, when we talk about the city's tax rate, why we have one of the lowest tax rates in the state of Iowa. The reason is we have significant community support, just not on the volunteer level, but real financial support as well. And so, Mandy, let's go ahead and move on with the presentation. I want to emphasize with these projects, we've included the full cost of these projects in this budget on here. We realize that council has set conditions on these projects, and we thought it'd be a good idea just to briefly go over the two main ones that we see on this. That's the required partnership agreements, and we're going to be covering those this evening. Through these partnership agreements that we'll have with each of these respective entities, the city will establish a maximum financial contribution, and these entities that we're going to be proposing our partnerships with will be responsible for the financing of those private pledges on this as well. And that relieves, well, actually, that's a significant item for the city. If we did not have these agreements, it's very likely, well, one of the options that we would have is that we'd have to simply wait for the pledges to be paid to the city before you could undertake these projects on it as well. So most of these pledges are going to be paid off over 5 years. We're proposing to start construction on these projects within the next 12 months on it. So that is the value of the partnerships that are being proposed, that will be proposed as a part of the decision making on these projects. The second item that we have is both of these projects, one of the requirements that council establishes is they're not going to increase the city's operating subsidy. And a good way to look at this is we've made a lot of progress on these items. I'm not ready to discuss results yet, but that is coming. What we've tentatively scheduled is both of these projects are going to be talked about on April 1st, and at that time we'll be also disclosing the operating plans that we have for both of these projects, and particularly the rec center on April 1st. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Talk about the community center. Again, the base plan is the renovation of the existing facility along with replacement of the elevator. The elevator will go all the way down to the gymnasium floor as well. Included with the base plan is about $7.6 million. We're going to seek an alternate bid that puts on the wing addition, so that would be the rest of the project. If we proceed with the alternate bid, it's roughly an $8.5 million project. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, again, this is very similar to what we've already talked about, but that's the requirements that we'll have for the community center and also our partnership through the Friends of the Pella Community Center. And Mandy, let's go over a brief financial overview of this. Now, as far as the project revenues, we're looking at project revenues of right around $7.6 million, a city contribution of $5.5 million, and for the base plan, that would be in a contribution from the Friends of the Community Center of $2.1 million for that project. Once again, the alternative design and the base plan, Mr. John Bloom of Shemmer Associates will be in attendance on April 1st to review that with council. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the rec center, what we have included in the budget is the base plan for the project, which is roughly a $34.5 million plan. It's also roughly a 63,000 square foot facility. People, various parties that have been working on the fundraising efforts for the city on this project are striving to build the full plan of the facility. That's actually a 78,000 square foot facility and roughly a $41 million price tag for the project. So when we look at the difference between what the base plan is and the full plan, listed up here is the full plan, but everything you see in kind of this black highlighted area will be alternate bids. So the 2 gymnasiums will be alternate bids. And instead of a rec pool for the base plan, we have a turf field that's listed up here again. But once again, the bid letting for the rec center will be on March 11th, and we'll have numbers for both the base plan and the full plan as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. And I believe we've already covered this, but the party that we'll be contracting with as far as the financing of the pledges is Pella Rec on the project. And if you wanted to look at it simplistically, what's being proposed for the rec center is a $17 million contribution from the City of Pella, plus $17.5 million from other parties, which would be the lion's share of that will be Pella Rec. And then one of the requirements, again, that the council put on this project, or established for this project, was it would be conducted on a revenue neutral basis. More to come on April 1st on that matter as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the total project budget, we covered it. It was at $34.5 million, but here's the various sources that we have. To date, we've secured the contribution. This is traditionally what the city has established at $17 million. We have the State of Iowa CAT grant that we received is $500,000. Pledges that we've actually received to date is a little over $1.5 million, and we'll be contracting with Pella Rec and just shy on their financial responsibility for the project. Their financial portion of the project will be just under $15.5 million. Okay, so I believe that does it for the rec center. And briefly, we'll go over the infrastructure associated with the project and what we're proposing for the rec center. And this is one of the items that's appealing to the rec center. Is when you look on the eastern side of our community, the Pella Rec Center is actually proposed in the northwest corner of the Pella Sports Park. But what's also associated with this project is a significant amount of infrastructure. We're planning to extend University Street, where it currently terminates at 240th Avenue, extend it out to the County Line Road, and that's probably going to be the primary entrance for the Pella Rec Center. We're also going to extend Baseline Drive associated with this project, but in addition to the street extensions, we also have water main enhancements that are going to improve fire flow for our industrial customers on the southeastern portion of our community as well. Overall, the infrastructure plan associated with this is roughly at $7.7 million. But when you look at the concept plan and the development concept, the rec center is in very close proximity to Pella Schools, Pella Christian Schools, Vermeer, as well as Lely. And generally, when you look at city's development efforts that we've had, we've been very successful recently with development in our community, housing within our community, particularly on the north side of town and the western side of our town. When you look at the southeastern portion of the side of the town, this project has the potential to incentivize or lead to additional development for the city of Pella as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as total revenue sources, we have a general obligation bond that's being proposed with this project of $6.7 million. A HUD grant, that's a federal grant of $1 million for the project. Total revenue sources of roughly $7.7 million. And then we have an itemized detail of what's included as far as the infrastructure associated with this. We would also like to mention what you'll hear during the budget presentation, and I don't want to spend time on this evening, but the truth of the matter is we'll have a development plan associated with this infrastructure. The point is when we capture and talk about additional development on the eastern side of our community, what cities typically do is you establish urban renewal plans on your community, And you're hoping to do is capture all the new development, the property taxes from the new development to help offset the debt cost incurred to provide for the infrastructure for the development. That's very likely what we'll be doing on the southeastern portion of our community. We're working through scenarios. What I've listed here is projected debt service levy increase for this project. The infrastructure on the rec center and these projects will likely be constructed during fiscal year 2026-27. So if we proceed with the rec center, absent this, what we would tell you is please be aware that we may need to increase our debt service levy rate up to 52 cents to support this project. However, we are looking at ways that we could potentially reduce that as well. We have some time, but as far as the plan that we have, we don't have everything quite worked out as far as being able to reduce that. So the takeaway is we may need to increase our rate by 52 cents to support these projects, but more to come on that as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. Finally, let's talk about that $17 million and the city's local option tax. When we had our referendum in the community, the eligible projects that we had for the local option sales and services tax referendum were the community center renovation, the proposed indoor recreation center, as well as the road improvements. And we know that there's been discussion in the past as far as councils, how much is being used for the roads versus the facility plan. To date, pre this fiscal year, we've been transferring approximately about half of the funds that we've collected from the new tax have been transferred over to road improvements. And taking on the projects, both the community center as well as the rec center in the short term, we believe that the debt service amount is going to count, that we're going to need to attribute about 74% in the short term of local option sales and services tax revenues to support the facility plan, that be the community center and rec center. However, as time goes on with the tax and the 20-year tax, more of the funding will be available to support road improvements over time because you'll be locked in on your debt service levels. But initially, it's at the 74 and 26%. And we'll be talking about that in greater detail next week as well. So before I get to my last slide in the presentation, is there any questions on the facility plan?
When you figured in the local option sales tax on this, are we figuring on the current rate that we're getting on our 28E agreement, or are we figuring on a proposed rate on the 28E?
Very good question. It's important to know when we talk about that Marion County redistribution, we're using that as 100% property tax relief, so that's not even factored into
Okay.
here. So
Thank you.
literally, this is what's being fed to the city or provided to the city through the state funding formula.
Okay.
And I'd also be remiss if I didn't say is one of the reasons why we have that Marion County redistribution agreement. These numbers may be a little bit off, but when we talk about the local option sales and services tax, City of Pella generates 65% of the local option taxes in Marion County, we believe, with that. Through the state distribution formula, we receive 21% of the tax. Don't ask me why, that's just the way it works. But that's one of the driving forces with that redistribution agreement as well. But to answer your question, Councilmember Brandhorst, very good question. None of that's factored into that. That all goes to the general fund for property tax relief.
Very
So,
good. Thank you.
okay. So let's finish up here. And last slide, you may be asking yourself, what does this all mean to me? Typical residential property home that we have in Pella, we're going to talk about next year. We believe right now, based off the preliminary number that we have, when you factor in the water and the wastewater rate increases of 5%, property taxes, even though we're keeping our rate at 10.75, the residential rollback went up by about 2%. What that did is it raised the taxable level to every property in Pella up to about 47% of your gross assessment value. It's about 45% right now on it, or maybe it's at, yeah, it's right around those rough percentages. So what we had here is about a 2% increase for the typical residential home as far as property taxes are concerned. And we did have some increases associated with water and wastewater increases, but overall, when we look at it, we think right now with this budget, the proposed budget, is about a $97 impact on an annual basis to the typical home, so it's about $8 a month. So, with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff presentation. And let me back up before I do that. Budget work sessions are scheduled for next Tuesday and Wednesday, March 11th and March 12th. Will be in this room, open to the public as well. We're still working on the budget books, and we anticipate they'll be delivered to each of your residents later on this week. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you guys may have on the 2026 budget.
All right, thank you, Mike. He's given opportunity for questions along the way. Does anybody have a question or comment? Final wrap up here. We have plenty of time to discuss it next week. Okay, we'll move on then to resolution number 6814 entitled Resolution Setting Time and Place for Public Hearing for the purpose of considering the proposed tax levy for the city's fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Mike?
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item, and this is an item that's a legislative requirement by the state of Iowa, is that we have to hold a maximum public hearing, maximum property tax. We have to establish a maximum property tax rate, and we have to hold a separate public hearing for that as well. So what this resolution does is it establishes March 25th as the public hearing date for the maximum property tax levy for FY 25-26. Staff is recommending we maintain our levy at $10.75 associated with next year on this. If council wanted to give yourself some flexibility and add anything additional into the budget, we just threw out a number of increasing it up 5% if you would like to do that. I believe that should generate somewhere right around $330,000 if you'd like to do that. That would be $11.30. And we talked about this at our last council meeting. We'd give a couple options. So it's important to keep in mind, you can set your max levy. Does not mean you have to levy that amount. You can levy less than that. You just can't levy above that. So even with the 1075, if council wanted to go lower than that, you have the option to do it. But once again, this just simply establishes the maximum levy amount. But I would also like to mention that whatever we do on the notice, it's going to get mailed out to every residence in Pella. And sometimes it's difficult explaining what the maximum levy is and what the actual recommended levy is as well. So,
Okay, so the this resolution, passage of this resolution sets the date. But we need to make a motion that includes the max tax rate. So before we vote on this, I need a motion to establish the maximum tax rate, whatever the desire of the group is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to keep it at the city admin recommendation.
So we're gonna you're saying that we'll put it out there, the max is 1075, that we'll consider. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
support that motion.
If we're gonna,
Hopkins,
did I do
Brandon
that right?
Horst.
Ish, Mandy?
Mandy, is that what you need?
Yep.
Okay. Questions, comments? All right, then we'll vote on that motion. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6815 entitled Resolution Approving Ordering the Preparation of Plans and Specifications, Form of Contract, Notice of Hearing, and Notice of Letting, Setting Date for Public Hearing, Authorizing the Taking of Bids, and Authorizing Bid Opening for the West Washington Street and Iowa 163 northbound ramp intersection improvements project. Mike?
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and once again, as Mayor DeWart stated, what we're really just doing here is we're authorizing the public hearing date for the project, which would be April 1st on this proposed project. And then we're establishing, giving city staff authorization to seek bids for the project. And what's being proposed on this is actually the installation of traffic signals on the northbound Highway 163 ramp right here. And also we'll have some lane additions that we'll have right around here. And through our partnership with QuickStar, these improvements were identified as necessary to maintain the current traffic levels within our community. Now let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now overall, the engineer's opinion of probable cost is $628,000, and through our agreement with QuickTrip, which is QuickStar, that they will be paying for 50% of these off-site improvements, and the city will be responsible for the remaining 50%. as well. And these are the dates that are associated with this resolution. So what the plan is that we'll conduct a bid letting on March 26th, and then we'll have a public hearing on this project on April 1st. So that concludes the staff presentation. I would like to mention before I do that the final completion for this project is scheduled by September 30th of this year.
Okay, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Brander Horse, is that Hopkins or? Sure. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, ordinance number 1061, entitled an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Pella, Iowa by conditionally amending the boundaries of the RR district to include the property generally located along the north side of Hempstead Drive and directing the zoning administrator to note the ordinance number and date of this change on the official zoning map, and this is the second reading. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and this property that we're talking about this evening, just to orientate everyone, Highway T15 is right here. The Boss London development would be located right up over here. The Eagle Creek development's here. And the highlighted area that we have here, which I believe is just shy of 39 acres, is located right here. What's being requested by Mr. Bo Brown is a change in the zoning classification from A1 Ag to rural residential. And generally, when you want to look at rural residential, that is the county version of low-density residential. And I believe the minimum lot size that we have for the parcels that are associated under the zoning classification is about 3 acres. It is important to note that this is a conditional rezoning, with the condition being that within 12 months of the zoning being approved, that the City Council would approve a final plat for this development as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, based on our review, we believe that this proposed plat aligns with the city's comprehensive plan. Housing is identified as a key strategic priority for the City of Pella. It still is under the current comprehensive plan. It still is within our community. In addition, this property abuts or is in close proximity to the Eagle Creek subdivision, which is low-density residential as well. It is important to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their January 27th meeting and unanimously approved it. The city staff is recommending approval this evening. And finally, I believe the applicant is requesting waiver of the third reading of the proposed ordinance this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Brander Horse, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Move to set aside the rules and place on third and final reading.
Support. Brander Horse.
Support.
Hopkins. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Now I need a motion for approval of adoption of ordinance number 1061.
Move to adopt.
Support. Brander Horse, Van Strylen. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, abstract of bills number 2170. Can I get a motion for approval?
I have a question. Is it time to ask a question? Or we wait?
About a bill?
About a bill, yeah.
Well, let's make the motion first and then.
Okay.
Support.
Hopkins, Brander Horse. Now discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
On the Shy Tannery, there's a bill in here for $69,000. Can you help me with what that's for?
Yes, Mr. Butler. What that is for, if you recall, when we went out to bids, we authorized up to $140,000 to seek bids on this. And so the engineers had to design all the bid packages for this. And they've also been dealing with the contractors on this. And I would say there has been significant interest on the Pella Rec Center project. To date, we have close to 60 contractors that have taken out plans on the project, including over 21 general contractors. So there's been a considerable amount of activity with the engineers on this. So this was authorized, but it's also being paid with private donations on it. So what you're seeing is the $69,000 gross expenditures that's going to ultimately be reimbursed by a private donation.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Motion passed. Council, anybody in council have any other business you want to address council with this evening? Any member of the public have any other business that you'd like to address council with? If so, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Dan Summit, 1435 Hazel Street. I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, but please, please, please go through your budget packet. Please. We are in a state right now where I think there are so many variables that we don't even know about. The tariffs are coming on. We don't know about state funding. There's just so many things we don't know are going to be happening. And as a citizen, it really concerns me right now where we're heading. I'm going to ask you to really be conservative, and I'm also going to ask you to really look at the core essentials for this city this year. I think we just have to be proactive. We don't know where we're heading as the United States. So please keep that, as you're thinking about this budget and you're looking through your budget packet. Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Ron Rosenboom, 510 East First. With budgets in mind, when or will the rec center ever produce a profit? Boss Landing Golf Course, is there ever a timeline that this is going to start paying for itself? The rec center, the swimming pools, all these things we're spending money on for recreation, are they ever going to pay for themselves? I guess we'll wait and see what your budget comes up with in a couple of weeks, what you come up with.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll adjourn to our policy and planning. Pella Area Community and Economic Alliance financial request. Pace is here to walk us through that.
Sorry, I'm taller than the mic is tonight. Thank you all for inviting us here this evening. I really want to start out by saying thank you for being a member of the PACE Alliance for the last 8 years, going on 9. For us, it's been a fabulous partnership. We are able to do a lot of things together and create a lot more efficiencies, which I'll go over, things that are very specific to the PACE Alliance in just a minute. But I thought I would share some of the stats that I shared at our annual breakfast a couple of weeks ago. And Harold, for this will be a reminder for you, or a refresher, since you attended the breakfast. Thank you very much for doing that. These are just some general numbers that we keep tabs on to really look at trends of what's going on in our community and really kind of keep a pulse on the health of the community overall. And I'm not talking about your physical health, but more just the economy and how we're functioning. So some of the stats that we keep. We looked at how many jobs employers in the 50219 zip code had in the 4 quarters of the last 4 quarters that the Iowa Department of, the state tracks. This will be the 4th quarter of 23 and the first 3 quarters of 24. And they had just under 13,600 jobs in our community. That is absolutely phenomenal for a rural community of our size, given our proximity to the metro. And where do all those people come from? Hopefully you can relate to this. This is a commuter pattern. This comes from the housing study that was released last year. The circular arrow represents the 3,465 people who live in Pella and work in Pella. The arrow that is pointing to the right, the lightest arrow up there, about the same number of people live in Pella and leave Pella to go to work. So they could be going somewhere else in Marion County. They could be going somewhere else outside of the county. So Des Moines, Ottumwa, Newton, wherever it is outside of Pella. The exciting part for us, and if you are on the roads at certain times of the day, you will see that we import more than we export. So that darkest green arrow represents over 6,400 people that come into work every day to work in our employers. So fantastic for us. Again, makes Pella very unique. I know this is not news to you, but maybe the numbers are. Makes it very unique that we actually grow during the day, which helps our economy. I'm gonna put up another stat here, and I'm actually gonna make you guys guess. I didn't at our breakfast. We have the stat of what these employers paid those for wages for those 13,600 jobs. Harold, you can't answer. What do you think a year's worth of wages for those 13,600 jobs would equal? Take a wild guess.
50 million.
190 million.
You guys are going to be very surprised. 929 million, almost $1 billion paid in wages from those employers. That just underscores the importance of keeping every single job, business, no matter what size, in the community to help support your budget and help make this community continue to grow. That is an absolutely phenomenal number that most communities our size are not going to be able to touch. It was a good guess, Spencer. I'll give you a runner-up. All right. We also look at just spending in the community. Those same 4 quarters, we had about $300 million of spending in our community. That's some of that local option sales tax that you realize. Our household median income still remains above the state average at over $81,000. We had 36 new businesses apply for their EIN numbers according to the state. And we had 166 new households. That's tracked by our office. And that is gross. So we don't always know how many leave until the census comes out, but we do have a good idea of how many are coming in. Again, a great indicator of a healthy community, a lot of them coming in to fill those jobs. And we had 1.6 million visits to our downtown. And this one is actually tracked through technology, and I'll go into it just very briefly. At PACE Alliance, we have the opportunity to tap into Placer AI. They're a company that gathers all kinds of data that they can use to sell. We geofence the downtown. We do this on an annual basis. The Central Business District, that includes the square, the Mullengrot. It will include Historical Village, the shopping, eating district downtown. And we do that basically because it's the highest concentration of businesses. So we can get a really good sampling of how many people come to our particular area. So that's geofenced, and these numbers will represent the calendar year of '24. So we're going to go to the right. Visitors, and this is what the report gives us, that's actually cell phones. So a visitor in this particular case is visiting this square. So it could be my cell phone, it could be yours, it could be our friends that come from all over the country and other countries. It's whoever goes into that particular invisible line. So in '24, we had just shy of 309,000 unique cell phones coming in. Those cell phones visited an average of 5.34 times. So you multiply that out, many of you are good at numbers, that gives you about 1.6 million visits. Again, I don't know how many other communities our size can say that about their downtown or their main districts. The average dwell time of those individuals is 42 minutes. This is actually down from last year. So last year, the average dwell time was 71 minutes. Doesn't make it really bad. It just might reflect more local traffic than visitor traffic. If you're a local, you kind of know where you're going. You come downtown frequently, because our frequency was up in '24 as well. So it just means that mix shifted just a little bit. Still about the same number of visitors. And if you want to do a linear graph of what that looks like, that is what's on the left. You can probably figure out what time frame that great big spike represents. Of course, tulip time. You can see other bumps right around Knoxville Nationals and the holidays in our community. So we can definitely see those. If you stretch it out even more, you can see weekends where there's home central football games. So we can see some of those events that really benefit our economy. All right. I want to just jump into the PACE Alliance. We do a lot of things in the community that nobody else is doing. It's very unique to our community. Our focus is really to support businesses that are here. So I'm going to walk through how we do that. And just to give you a very brief background of the PACE Alliance, we are a membership association. We are a nonprofit. Our main revenue source and how we are able to do what we do comes from memberships. We have 4 working councils. Those councils really do the work. Staff might execute it, but that's where a lot of the ideas come from of what businesses need, because it is the business owners that are creating these ideas. And we only have 3 staff members, so we are lean, but we're mean, right, Mary? We get it done. All right, and speaking of members, we had 25 new members in 24. 66% of our members are actively involved, meaning they attend events, they sponsor things, they show up. And when I talk to my counterparts around the state, they're roughly 35 to 40%. So we have businesses that are very passionately involved in our community and want to help each other and see it succeed. They're so active, they gave us over 3,100 hours of their volunteer time to help put on different events, of which we held 77 events, drawing almost 25,000 people. Some of those being community-based, some of those being very specifically for our members. All right, we really have 3 main priority areas, and these are similar year to year. This is what we do. We really focus on workforce attraction, member connections, wanting them to really get ingrained in the community, learn from each other, and community engagement. We want them to stay around. So I want to talk a little bit about what we do around workforce attraction. Mike hit on some of it. We've been hearing it for a long time, housing. That has been a need in our community for years and years. In 2016, and again in 2023, we partnered with the Marion County Development Commission and helped fund both of those studies. The study most recently came out in 2024, and you're probably very familiar with what that told us. We need another 1,270 units. And I do want to make just a side note here, thank you for putting that priority on your plate. It is not an easy one, but working with developers, having this information available, and your priority placed on that has really brought that forward and helped bring that stock even more. We've got a ways to go yet, but we're making some great strides in that. All right. We also have a focus around digital with our workforce attraction. A lot of the people who haven't been here don't know about Pella. They're probably not going to pick up the phone. The website is the greatest resource they can have. We have a huge website. It's over 275 pages, but it is heavily used by people who are looking at coming here or looking at getting involved. I just put up some of the page views that we had in 2024. So on our website, we house a database of rentals, what rentals are available at the current time, and also a listing of landlords, so they can call to get a future. That had over 23,000 views. We know housing is tight, but that might put that into perspective. Really helps them find what they need. Over 17,000 views of the job board that we have. We link to many companies, list positions available. This is one of the resources that people in our community, outside of our community, can go to find a position here within our community. Our member directory is our members. Over almost 20,000 people are looking for you, looking for business owners. They want to know what services they can get here, who can help them out, where can they go to the doctor. So it's a great resource that is heavily used. And more on integrating people when they get here, we offer the community calendar of events. So we have one place where we list all the events going on in the community that we know of, and we had over 52,000 views of those. That is wonderful. It takes a lot of our time to maintain that, but well worth it. And then we also have a list of available commercial properties and sites. We're kind of matchmaking. When somebody is looking at coming to the community or growing their business, we help find them a location. And that's not always easy, as you can probably imagine, but we have enough contacts, feelers, that we can really help out and be a resource for that. Oops. Hit the wrong button there. We also have a print and a digital version of our relocation guide. That's the one on the right. It's a magazine style relocation guide that talks about what life is like in Pella. What does healthcare look like? What do the schools look like? What are their childcare options? So it's a great piece that they can download or pick up when they're in the community, either interviewing or just passing through. Also on workforce attraction, we try to take advantage of as many niche markets as we can. And a great one that is here, at least captive for the summer, are our interns. Last year we had 168 interns in Pella for the summer. And we wanted to make sure that they knew exactly what their summers were gonna look like outside of their employer. So we had 138 attend orientations. You'll see the bottom right picture, that one was at Vermeer. So they have a welcome orientation for all of their interns. The companies invite us in to really talk to the interns about what can they experience here, what can they do, what can they see, make sure they get a great picture of the area so they can maybe see themselves landing here after they graduate. We had 69 interns active on GroupMe. That was a brand new platform that we tried this year. Mary Mansfield from our office was the one to be kind of the administrator on that. And if you don't know what GroupMe is, myself included, we're not the target audience. It is a platform that the interns can communicate with each other. If they want to have a volleyball game on Central's campus, because many of them live there, they can do that. If they want to go to the beach, they can do that. It was a great first time try for us. We will do that again this year. And we had 44% of them actively engaged in community events while they were here. The middle on the top picture is a group that we saw down at Thursdays in Pella, along with many other interns. YP, the Young Professionals of Pella, invited them to different events throughout the summer. We would see them on the beach, you'd see them walk around town, downtown in the coffee shops, exactly what we wanted to see them do. So we will do the same again this year. I think the intern class, as we call them, might be just a hair smaller, but still, there's 160, even if there's 150 of them, it's a great pool that we can tap into. We also offer community tours for individuals, mostly with our larger companies that are looking at prospective employment here. So we work with the company on the day of their interview. We schedule in a 45-minute tour with the candidate to drive around the community. We get a chance to talk to them about what does healthcare here look like? What does just life here in Pella look like? What are the amenities? What's in our downtown? What does housing look like? So we take them on a drive because we want them to make sure they like the community as well as their job. We also talk about communities around us. Pella isn't exactly right for everybody, but we want to make sure that they like the area as well. In 2024, we did 58 of those. That's actually down. There's some years we do 120 of them. It all depends on how they are hiring that particular year, but still, it's a service we offer. Not only do we do it for larger companies, we do it for our small member companies as well. If they have somebody that they would like to have a tour of the community, we are happy to do it. And a lot of times it is a benefit for the candidate to ride around with somebody who's not employed with their future employer, so they can ask very honest questions. And it's a lot of fun for us, and it's very beneficial for them. All right, our second priority, member connections. This is something that nobody else in the community is doing because we don't want to duplicate efforts. But one of our priorities is really to connect business owners, especially those that are just starting their business. Maybe they're just the only person in their business. But connect them with others who they can learn from, who they might sell to or partner with, collaborate with. So we have 4 different events, and these were all ideas from those councils that I mentioned. One of them is PBX, and I would invite any of you to attend these. This is a networking evening meeting that we have once a month. We have a topic that we always discuss. For instance, how can you use AI in your business? How can you increase the value of your business? Or what do you do in this particular situation? And these are pictures from there. It's a great group that just bounce ideas off of each other and have gotten very close and really gotten to know each other. Another one we do is Let's Do Lunch, and this is merely lunch. We all eat lunch. Sometimes we have no plans. So once a month, we put a date and a location out there, not only to support a member restaurant, but everybody can just gather for an hour, meet new people, talk about what do you do, and make those connections. The next one will be coming out shortly, so watch your newsletters. Backstage Pass, this is a fun one. I know we've had a couple of you on some of those tours. We have really taken the opportunity to showcase what happens behind the scenes with some of the businesses in the community that you might know they're there, but you don't know necessarily what goes on either in the business or behind the scenes. So we have gone through American Wood Fibers down by Pella Corporation. We got to tour the new C-section surgical suite before it went into service at Pella Regional Hospital. We did a behind-the-scenes tour at Garden Chapel Funeral Home, and we will do more of those. So we take a limited number just because of timing, but it's a great way for everybody to get to know what's in the community and what businesses can help them out. We also have Dutch greeters. You all probably have seen our pictures with the big scissors and the ribbon, cutting them, welcoming them to the community. We have a group of about 30 that will come once a month to welcome new businesses or new members to our community. For them, the business owner, they tell us it is the most welcoming experience for them. For our Dutch greeters, they want to meet who is new in town. Of course, they want to know what they do, all about them. On our end, particularly, we want to give them some press, some brand awareness. So Mary from our office will write up a blog. They will tag every single business that was represented as a Dutch greeter, just to really help their engagement, to help our engagement, and put it out there for the public. So a great way for us just to welcome them to the community. Community engagement. We feel that is of utmost importance to keep people here. Amenities obviously drive that, but they've got to feel a part of the community. And probably the most public-facing we have is Thursdays in Pella. This will be our 28th year. And I get calls all the time from my counterparts wanting to know, how do you do it? How do you get it started? How do you keep it running? I don't know. To be honest, it's something we have here just innate in Pella. We have some great members who will be down participating, helping us make each themed night a great success. This year we will host 8 of those, and it always finishes with a city band, which is a huge hit as well. And some of the comments that I take with me, and I hear this almost every night from at least one person each year, we have heard from a lot of new residents that are very new to the community, that they were kind of on the bubble. They liked their job, didn't quite know which community they would land in until they attended a Thursdays in Pella, and they knew this was the community they wanted either to raise their kids in or to live in. I also hear from kids, and yes, I am this old, that they experienced Thursdays in Pella when they were a kid, and now or so people that come down each and every night. The other one that is very public facing, we are happy to contribute to all that happens during the holidays with our horse-drawn carriage rides, cocoa bar, Santa visits, the tree lighting. It's a great partnership. It really adds to the festivities, and we can definitely see the bump in our visitation from everybody's hard work on those. And the last thing I just want to touch on is around community engagement. Last year, we hosted and created on our website a volunteer hub. We hear from a lot of new residents when they are arriving in the community. They want to volunteer but don't even know where to start. We know where they are in our office, but to hand them a list of 18 phone numbers to call is daunting. Even people who live here want to volunteer but don't necessarily know what all the opportunities are. So on our webpage, you can just click on the very top, volunteer, and it brings up everything on the right, just list of opportunities and interest. So it talks about what the commitment looks like, hour-wise, what time of day or weekends, what you will be doing, who to contact. So it has been a great addition. We'll continue to add to that and keep it fresh. Just a side note, because you are all involved in many nonprofits or even your businesses, if you have volunteer needs, you just go and say, submit a volunteer opportunity, type it in, and we'll review it and put it up. It's a great tool. I would ask that you send anybody there. It's a one-stop shop, a very easy way to get people engaged into the community, whether they have lived here a very long time or brand new. So this was a little bit of an undertaking, probably more to maintain it and keep it fresh, but just like our rentals, it's very important, and we will do that. All right. Just a little look, Mary is going to hand out just some additional information that I may not have covered or highlighted, and I would just end by saying, once again, thank you for being a member, and we would love to have you as a member in the upcoming year as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Karen. Do we have questions for Karen or comments?
I really wanted to thank you for coming, especially on such a dreary night. And
Hey, it's not snowing or sleeting.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
60
Yeah,
mile an hour wind,
yeah.
No problem.
I think that for me, it was really important for me to have a refresher tonight because we're heading into a really tight budget season. And so for me, it was really energizing to see what you do and to get the numbers of what you've accomplished. And so I wanted to thank you and just say I have a pretty large takeaway tonight by virtue of this presentation. So thank you.
My pleasure.
But how do you handle 168 interns? They don't all come at once, do they?
Most of them will come within a week. So you think about your college education experience, you're out in May, your internship will start. They're usually all here by the very last week of May. So we'll have a kickoff barbecue for them.
First Wednesday
First
in June.
Wednesday, so it'll be June 4 this year. And we invite them all. So most of them will reside in the larger companies, but we invite all of our members, if they have an intern, we will be happy to get them connected. And a lot of them stay on Central's campus, so they're kind of all together anyway, so it really doesn't matter what company they are interning for. And in fact, we encourage that because they can learn about other employers or what they're doing, just in case maybe they're not placed right. The next year, if they're a junior or an underclassman, they can come back and look for a different opportunity if they need to.
Okay, I get it. You have them in companies. I was picturing you guys doing something with them.
We got bunk
We do a
beds.
lot.
Well, I mean, teaching them how to run a pace office.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, they're not our interns.
Just
No,
so
they are,
thanks for the explanation.
no, they are
Thank you.
placed anywhere from a Pella Vermeer all the way down to an accountant's office. So they are all size of companies and they have great internships while they're here. But again, they're not there more than 8-9 hours a day. We want to show them what else is here
Okay.
while they're here for the summer.
Thank you.
We were gonna send them your way, John. All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, let's move on to item 2, the Mullengrove Plaza repairs. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what we're here to talk about this evening is proposed repairs to the Mullengrove Plaza. To bring council up to speed on this, we've had a water infiltration issue at the Mullengrove Plaza. We recently hired Mr. Bob Beanstra, who serves as our public works engineer, to review this issue. And ultimately, we have some pictures of the plaza, and I'm going to let Denny stand up here and tell us as far as the proposed repairs shortly. But Mandy, if we can go to the map, please. Next slide, please. We have roughly about, I believe, a 30 by 50 area. It's a little larger than the area we're showing up here on the board, that we're going to be replacing all the bricks and everything that goes underneath the plaza. We're hoping by doing that solves the water infiltration in the Mullengrove garage area that's directly below this area of the plaza. So Denny, if you could fill council in on the proposed improvement and the timeline, what we're looking to do this improvement in.
Yeah, I'd like to correct the drawing a little bit. The blue area of removal actually goes to the other side of the bridge and lines up with the west wall of the east building. And the red area that shows the electric room also goes clear over to the east, or the west wall of the east building. So the area has grown to about 30 by 50. What these two pictures show to your right is actually the precast ceiling in the underground garage. And what we found, there's 1.5 inches, 2 inches of sand under some of it, some crushed limestone, and then this membrane material. I apologize, I've been carrying this thing around in an envelope for like 3 months. Before the meeting, I couldn't find it. I'm not sure what the vehicle it ended up in, but it's very poor quality. It's like a thin tar paper. It appears when that limestone was dropped in there 30 years ago, it poked holes and ripped it because it's just very fine. So as we remove all that, the plan is above that, it was precast panels, because when you go in the basement, down the joints, there's stalactites. What are probably made up of salt that's been used to thaw the ice this time of year from above, leaking through. And it's deteriorated the electric equipment and a lot of rusting going on. So we'll remove all that, clear over to the edge where we fall off next to the canal, and then it goes down clear to the footing. In that area, we'll put some clean rock, put a tile, and we'll relay some real membrane this time, get it to drain over towards that tile, and then into the 12-inch storm sewer that's there. And then put all the brick and the banding back and make it look pretty again. So that's the plan. We've recruited Garden because you can't just string line from side to side. There's a lot of elevations going on, so we're gonna have a little engineering done, a little drawing with some specifications, and let them assist us on it. But I still think it's in the 30,000 range, and there's several local contractors that should be able to bid on it.
I was surprised at that cost, because I thought it would be a lot more. I hope it's that cost.
Well, you know, it's, for the most part, it's handwork. You and I could go do it. All we need is get one brick loose, and we can pretty much do it from there by hand. It's, you know, and they will use a skid loader, but it's
Maybe
not
you
like there's
should.
a lot of depth.
Maybe you should, Denny.
I think
Okay, any questions?
Sounds like it needs to be done.
All right. City administration project updates, Mike?
Covered quite a bit this evening. These are items that we have on the list. We'll be talking about the lead water service lines during the budget process as well, but the other items, economic development policy. The ice rink chiller will be scheduled for April 1st as well, and then we'll also hopefully around that time have an update on the dog park project as well. So, Mayor, if the council has any questions on any other projects, be happy to answer them.
Nope. I heard that they're pulling the well, they're pulling the pump out of the well.
Yeah, absolutely. Northway is in town, pulling the well, and I don't know, they thought it'd take them anywhere from 8 to 9, 10 days, depending on how much damage they find.
Okay.
As many pieces of casing I've seen laying on the ground, I think it's going pretty well, because that tells me they're able to unscrew them when Jordan 1 went bad a couple years ago, we had to cut in Torture. That was how bad, and it reflects how bad the material was, but, so, going, so far so good.
Then I heard today from another person that Pella Corp has laid off some people. Has anybody else heard of that?
Well, they had a 1% reduction. It's been, about 6 weeks ago, maybe.
Well, this was
I
today.
think there are some
This
more-
week, this
more
is new
today.
stuff.
I think there are some new ones.
Just wondered if anybody else had heard it, so.
Okay, anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Carl Stone Hopkins, all in favor, please say yes, opposed no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Van Strylen,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
We are adjourned.